Ladies and gentlemen, the Commander-in-Chief. Request permission.
At the outset, I'd like to welcome all of you to the Navy Day press conference, which has got recommenced after almost 2 years. As you are well aware, the Indian Navy observes this Navy Week on 4th of December every year, is to commemorate the daring and trailblazing attack by the Indian naval warships in the 1971 war. This being the 50th year of the 17th war and also the Swarnim Vijay Varsh, this day is special for us, and therefore it's appropriate that we recognize the work done by the forefathers who were there in 1971. As you are well aware, I took over as a CNC West on the 30th, and when Admiral Hari Kumar has moved up as the Chief of the Naval Staff. And for those of you who don't know, I've served almost 15 years in WNC, and all my 4 commands from V to Virat have been at Mumbai. I've also had the good privilege of being the Chief of Staff over here in 2018-19. Future growth as well. On the security front, the Indo-Pacific has gained a lot of significance, and this is coupled with the traditional and the non-traditional threats that have remained in the area of responsibility. Our Prime Minister's effort and directives on SAGAR, which is Security and Growth for All, are well known to you, and therefore we will intend to follow that in letter and spirit. So we intend to operate over a wide spectrum, and this will range from war fighting on one end, conflict prevention, and to HADR on the other end. Our ships and submarines and aircraft have been deployed for a large period of time, and these will continue to do so in the future. My vision as the CNC of the Western Naval Command is primarily to focus our efforts towards national interests, making sure that we deter our adversaries, and if the conflict is thrust upon us, win it comprehensively. Accordingly, we've been putting our ships, aircraft and submarines to sea to maintain continued presence, be it through the mission-based deployments or initiatives of foreign cooperation. While we continue to operate out of sight of most people, our focus is also on coastal security, and a large number of mandated tasks will be fulfilled in the future. While some are almost there, some are still some work in progress. Of course, in the future, we will also have to look at jointness with the new PRISM. As you all were aware, the jointness aspects have changed ever since the creation of the Chief of the Defence Staff, and is getting greater focus, and we look forward to greater integration with the Air Force, the Army and the Coast Guard. We believe you that COVID has made certain changes in our way we operate, and we look forward to helping and operating with the civil administration in whatever we can do in terms of COVID. There were a large number of efforts were made by the Western Naval Command in the first and the second wave of COVID, and we are well prepared to handle the Omicron crisis. As the shipbuilding is concerned, the Indian Navy has always been at the forefront of indigenization and making sure that we remain Atmanirbhar. Towards this, 2 submarines have been recently commissioned, and INS Visakhapatnam has been delivered by Mascot Docks Limited. Let me try and answer this question. Although I'm not a medical officer, I look at it from an executive perspective of how we're going to deal with this challenge. Omicron has been designated as a variant of concern by the government, and it has also been brought out in the various documents issued by the Government of India that it is well detectable by the tests that we are doing, and therefore we will have to be careful. So recently we issued a pan-Navy diktat that Omicron is a variant of concern. We have laid down certain provisions that we are going to follow within the Navy, which include all the parameters of COVID protocols, all the compliance with the state government directives, as well as maintaining a very clear and distinct COVID hygiene and system. As far as our beds are concerned, we have geared up a substantial amount of capability within our hospitals, and therefore we are well prepared to tackle any offshoots of this Omicron. In addition, we have also prepared our places for quarantine, and we look forward to interacting with the state government. If they need any help, we'll be able to provide that help, and we'll be more than willing to walk that extra mile. The aim is to save lives, irrespective of whom they belong, and I think that's very clear in our minds that we will save every life that is possible in this pandemic. Okay, दिनेश मौर्य जी, मैं कोशिश करता हूँ हिंदी में आपका जवाब दिया जाए कि हर देश अपने सेनाओं को इस तरह प्रिपेयर करता है कि अगले जो युद्ध होगा उसमें उसकी विजय प्राप्त हो। तो ये एक नॉर्मल स्टेटमेंट है जो कि एक पॉलिटिकल लीडर ने किया है, एंड उसके साथ में कई सारी प्रक्रिया उसके साथ शुरू होती है। तो ये लार्जर डायरेक्टिव है। हमारे प्रधानमंत्री ने भी कई ओकेजन में ये बोला है कि हमारे देश की सेनाओं को हर वो असलहा प्राप्त हो, हर एक जो चीज़ें भी रिक्वायरमेंट हो उसको मीट किया जाए। सो इट्स अ स्टेटमेंट विच इज मेड बाय चाइनीज लीडर, उनके प्रीमियर ने इसको किया है, और रिक्रूटमेंट एक उनके यहाँ चैलेंज है। सो उन्होंने कहा है कि 3 लाख लोग लेंगे, अब किस कैटेगरी में लेंगे उसका ये सब देखना पड़ेगा, और ये एक स्टेटमेंट है जो कि पॉलिटिकल स्टेटमेंट को क्लियर है। एनी लीडर इन द कंट्री, एनीवेयर इन द वर्ल्ड विल मेक अ स्टेटमेंट लाइक दिस। So I think we must examine the details of this statement. What इसमें क्या इसके पहलू हैं और इसमें क्या क्या होगा, और उसके बाद से इसके बारे में देखा जाएगा। पर मैं आपको एक और चीज़ बताना चाहता हूँ कि जो देश की जो कोई भी सेनाएं होती हैं उनका एक लॉन्ग टर्म प्लान होता है। सो चाहे वो भारतीय नौसेना हो, चाहे और कोई सेना हो, उसका एक लॉन्ग टर्म प्लान होता है। तो इंडियन केस में एक लॉन्ग टर्म इंटीग्रेटेड पर्सपेक्टिव प्लान है, तो उसके हिसाब से एक ग्रोथ होगी भारतीय सेना की और भारतीय नौसेना की। तो उसके बेसिस पे कुछ काम चल रहा है, और जैसा कि आपको पता है कि करीब 39 जहाज जो हैं अंडर कंस्ट्रक्शन चल रहे हैं भारतीय नौसेना के लिए, और 49 जहाज़ों के लिए AOL मिल चुका है। सो ये एक शिप बिल्डिंग एक लॉन्ग ड्रॉन आउट प्रोसेस है। तो उसके लिए काम चलेगा, और जैसे जैसे ये जहाज इंडक्ट होंगे, जो कोई भी इसके लिए मैन पावर रिक्वायर्ड होगी वो इंडक्ट होगी। ये तो गवर्नमेंट का एक सिस्टम बना हुआ है।
हेलो,
या
Samir Karve from Maharashtra Times. Question supplementing to this. Recently there have been seizures in Arabian Sea, and the doves were passing from Makran coast to various destinations, from Mozambique to South Africa and various destinations. So is it still on, and is the Afghan-Pakistan nexus still seen in this drug trafficking right now also?
ओके, ये जो ड्रग मेनेस है इसको लेट मी हैंडल इट एट द मैक्रो लेवल। इसमें देयर इज नो डाउट कि ड्रग में जो पैसा आता है वो लेजिटिमेट तरीके से इस्तेमाल नहीं होता है, और ज़्यादातर ये पैसा जो है ये या तो चैनलाइज हो जाता है टेररिज्म की तरफ, या मैरिटाइम टेररिज्म की तरफ, या पायरेसी की तरफ, या अनटूवर्ड एक्ट्स की तरफ। पाकिस्तान के इसमें हरदम बहुत बड़ा हाथ रहा है थ्रू आउट, और उसमें कोई डिनाइबिलिटी नहीं है ना। ओवर अ पीरियड ऑफ टाइम क्या हुआ है कि जो ड्रग्स लैंड रूट से जा रहे थे, वो अभी इन्होंने सोचा कि ये सी रूट पे ज़्यादा आसानी है इसको ले जाने के लिए, एंड मोस्ट ऑफ देम वर डिस्टाइंड फॉर यूरोप एंड अमेरिकाज दैट एरिया, बिकॉज वहीं पे पैसे मिल रहे थे इन लोगों को उसकी वैल्यू थी। नाउ ऑफ लेट वी सीन अ ट्रेंड दैट अ लार्ज नंबर ऑफ Iranian DAOs or DAOs which are registered in the in this general area of Indian Ocean have been used by the Pakistani side, and इनकी जो कुछ लोग की मोडस ऑपरेंडी थोड़ी अलग अलग है, but over a period of time, because of a huge amount of surveillance effort, and each of these drug catches are actually based on some intelligence, because unless until you have the intelligence, the ocean is very large, so to track all of them may not be possible. So based on the intelligence input that comes to us from various sources, be it the multinational forces, be it the our own law enforcement agencies, that we are able to put a large amount of area under surveillance. इसमें हमारे जो एयरक्राफ्ट हैं, P8I एयरक्राफ्ट है, और कई सारे और अनमैन्ड सिस्टम्स जो हैं उनको इस्तेमाल किया जाता है, और उसकी वजह से जब इसको सर्वेलेंस पे रखा जाता है, बहुत इन टर्म्स ऑफ कहाँ पे हैं और क्या बात कर रहे हैं, तो उससे कुछ लीड्स मिलती हैं, उस लीड्स के बेसिस पे इनका ऑपरेशन होता है, और बेस्ड ऑन द ऑपरेशन वी टेक अ call as to what is to be done, and most of them are getting caught who are operating in our area. Now any support that is required closer to, let's say, the east coast of Africa, we put our surveillance assets there also. So there is a lot of cooperation happening internationally between navies. There is a lot of cooperation happening within the country, between the law enforcement agencies, the anti-drug agencies, the Coast Guard, the Navy, everybody. So I think we are playing as a team, and because we are playing as a team, I think we are getting a lot of success. So that's the bottom line, and our aim is to make sure that this drug cartelization and the movement of drugs is caught at the earliest, and that will be our effort in the future. I request the Chief of Staff Admiral Swaminathan to answer this question. He was very much on the scene of the action, and therefore he has first-hand knowledge. So I'll request him to answer this question.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Admiral Swaminathan. I'm the Chief of Staff of the Western Air Command. But in my previous job, I was the Flag Officer Offshore Defence Advisory Group. And all of you would recollect that this incident happened in the offshore, the Western offshore. So I was very much involved not just in the rescue, but in the post-rescue analysis of the incident as well. There was a high-level committee that was constituted by the Government of India that was headed by the DG Shipping. It had DG Shipping, it had the Director General Hydrocarbons, and the JS, a Joint Secretary from the Ministry of Defence as members. And they were, allowed the latitude to co-opt any other members that they might want. So I was also co-opted as a member of that. So this high-level committee went through all aspects of the incident, from how the offshore was administered. The offshore has an ecosystem in which a lot of work happens through several levels of contracts. There are several levels of contracts, contractors and subcontractors. There are service providers, there are vessel providers, there are all kinds of people there. So the first part they looked at was how that entire ecosystem is organized to carry out offshore work. And then how is it organized to look after these kind of contingencies in that sector, because it's a sector that has multiple players. There were some things that needed to be improved there. On the day of the incident itself, the behavior of the people, why that happened, what is the communication between the masters, the people on the side, and those kind of things. Safety equipment, safety procedures, safety processes, all of that. So all aspects of the incident, what happened before, what happened during the incident, what needed to happen after, all of them have been analyzed thoroughly. And to the best of my knowledge, the high-level committee has made a whole raft of recommendations and submitted to the Government of India, and I'm sure it's being considered at the moment by the Government of India.
I address this coastal security issue on a macro perspective, just to give you a broad guideline. कोस्टल सिक्योरिटी में 3-4 मेजर स्ट्रैंड्स हैं. if I were put in 4 major strands, and then there are sub-strands to it. Now, this entire thing is governed by the CCS, Cabinet Committee on Security Approval, in Feb 2009, and a large number of mandates were given both to the Navy and other agencies, and based on those mandates, a lot of work has happened. So let me just take these 4 strands that I am talking of. First is that we must know what is happening. That means we must maintain surveillance. So we must try and see what is happening, how it is happening. So for that, we have employed a system of aircraft surveillance, we have employed a system of helicopter surveillance, and surveillance by unmanned systems. Unmanned systems gives us greater capability because they can remain on task for long. Then we also deployed surface units on a regular basis. When I say we, means the Navy and the Coast Guard both, because it's a shared charter. While the Navy is in the lead, the Coast Guard is required to assist. In addition, we are maintaining electronic surveillance. Be it radars, be it the coastal security network, the radars, the AI, the electro-optical, the AIS, the LRIT, all those. Now, to merge all the information that emerges from this huge amount of surveillance that we do, we have a center which is called the Joint Operations Center. Now, all this information is put in there, and we try and make sense out of it, that if this boat is going like this, this is the pattern that it is observing. So a lot of big data analysis is happening there, so that we find out what are the trends that are emerging and what is happening where. In addition, there are many other operation centers that we are looking at. So after knowing what is happening in the maritime domain, now the next is on people. A lot of fishermen are going out to sea. They are doing a lot of work, commercial activities happening, fishing is happening, and it impacts the livelihoods of many people. So what we've done is, we've said, okay, first and foremost, we must know what kind of boat you are using. So there's a boat registration program. Then we said a state or a district must have same color boats, so that you don't have different kind of people coming. So let's say a boat from Maharashtra goes across to Tamil Nadu. We know exactly this boat is from Maharashtra. Then what we've done is, we've said that each of these boats must have some electronic device for transponders. Now this transponders is the work is still in progress. Like you asked, Vinay, you asked this question, this is one work which is still in progress. Then what we said is, every person who goes on the boat, the fishing boat, must have some ID. So there was a problem between ID, because what is happening, the owners are different, the people who are going on the boat are different, and that's also a floating population. So we said, okay, please have biometric IDs. So biometric IDs have been put. Then there are fish landing centers and fish landing points. So we said there should be a process where the person who goes out must also come back. So that's another thing. In addition, we've had a lot of coastal security meetings and community interaction programs. So the aim is to educate the fishermen who go to sea, so that they are our ears and eyes. We also tell them so that we can differentiate between our fishermen and somebody who's not so friendly with us. The third, जैसे मैंने पहले बताया, नेवी में एक मैरीटाइम, लेट मी पुट दिस इशू इन लार्जर पर्सपेक्टिव. देयर इज अ नेवी का एक विजन डॉक्यूमेंट जो कहता है कि नेवी ये करेगी, एंड दिस इज बेस्ड ऑन द डायरेक्टिव्स ऑफ द गवर्नमेंट दैट दिस इज व्हाट द नेवी इज एक्सपेक्टेड टू डू. नाउ बेस्ड ऑन द विजन डॉक्यूमेंट, ऑफ कोर्स देयर इज अ document which says that this is the maritime capability that we need, but you cannot create a capability overnight. So it will take a finite amount of time, and it will take a finite amount of money. Plus it will also depend upon how much capacity you have in the country. So while the Indian Navy has supported and has nurtured all the shipyards in the country, ranging from Mazdocks Limited to GRSE to GSL, private shipyards everywhere, CSL. Now there is the capacity in the country is only finite, and if we go back into our naval history, we'll realize that why initially when we started in 61 building ships, we were building very few ships in the country, and most of them were getting imported. Now the trend is totally different. Today we have 39 ships on order, out of which 37 are being constructed in the country. Only 2 are coming from abroad. And those are also coming from abroad because there are capacity constraints that we cannot build at the rate that we want to build. So the Maritime Capability Perspective Plan, which is already in vogue, is the one which decides what capability will emerge in the future. And this capability is directly related to the role that is assigned to the Navy. Now, the capability is on 3 fronts: ships, submarines, and aviation assets. So, because the Navy is a 3-dimensional service, we concentrate on all 3. And therefore, something or the other is progressing on all the fronts. In addition, we will have to match the requirement of manpower with these assets as they come in. And also, we'll have to match the creation of infrastructure which will come in with these assets. So it's a very complex process, and there is a lot of effort which is put into to evolve this long-term perspective plan. Now, based on the perspective plan that you heard of the Defence Acquisition Procedures 2020 and its predecessors, that certain amount of process gets started, whether it is taking the AON or issuing the RFP or doing the trials or building ships, things like that. Now, the ISE 2 is very much a part of that, and the ISE will be a centerpiece of our entire conduct of operations at sea. Similarly, the submarine provides us to do sea denial. Those will also be inducted at some point in time. Project 75 India, I think the RFP has already been issued. Why I'm trying to tell you all this is, most of it is done by the Naval Headquarters and it is their charter. In Western Naval Command, we monitor some of these, but we are not directly responsible for it. So, while I may answer some questions, I think you will have to revert to Naval Headquarters for most of it to find out what is the exact status. Because we do not monitor it on a daily basis, on a weekly basis. We monitor it on a 3-monthly basis, something like that. So, the ISE 2, as far as it is concerned, the framework of the ISE 2 has been decided. In fact, the Navy would go to the government to take the AON shortly, and what are the QRs of this ISE are also being finalized, and it would be premature for me to say anything on this till the time the AON is not accorded. The AON is the first start point when the government accepts that this is what the kind of platform that you would get. As we're moving on to the future ships are concerned, the next generation destroyers and the next generation frigates and the next generation corvettes and the missile vessels, these are projects which have been defined in the Maritime Capability Perspective Plan, and much work is happening on all fronts. Because if you want to build a different ship which is different than the Kolkata class or the Visakhapatnam class, a lot of work will have to be done before you go to the government and say this is what the ship will look like. So it will be based on modern concepts, it will be based on modern weaponry, and will be incorporating all the features of stealth and the requirements of fighting a war up to 2050 or something like that.
And how is the Navy dealing with this if the dynamics have changed?
You are all well aware of the Galwan crisis which happened and what happened thereafter. I think most of the time people forget the role of the Navy that it played in the resolution of that crisis to a certain extent. My view is, although I was not present in the Western Naval Command at that point in time, so I would not say in terms of certainty, but my view is that you have to make sure that a person gets troubled if somebody pokes at his weakness. And if we were to say that comparatively to the Chinese, which was there, the Galwan crisis, specifically the Chinese were involved, I think the Indian Navy was the strengthened force in the maritime domain. And that's what I think we tried to do, and whatever operations we did at sea had a certain impact on the land border and the discussions thereafter.
Please speak in the mic. I'm really sorry for interrupting you. Can you throw some light on this, sir?
What exactly do you want to know?
Sir, you just mentioned that
The time frame in which our ships are built will have to reduce. A lot of effort is put in. The Navy has nurtured this indigenous shipbuilding industry for almost 50 years, in fact 60 years. The first ship ordered, Ajay, was in 1961. So it's 60 years now. So we'll have to take this forward. See, the cooperation between Pakistan and China is a cause of concern for us, and it shall remain a cause of concern, because any two countries who cooperate in this case will pose a different challenge in the future. The major change, I think most of you must remember that Pakistan by and large in the past had very few ships. Now all those ships which are there were also second hand, and therefore their capabilities were finite. Now there is a marked shift in this thought process in the Pakistan Navy, and that is something which I think you people must examine and write about, is that they are acquiring new ships from everywhere, be it the Millennium class corvettes that they bought from Turkey, be it the Tugril that they bought just now, they're getting from China, or maybe the future submarines that they're going to get from China. So Pakistan Navy is also growing, and now they've realized that they're going to get new ships. With new ships come newer equipment, newer capability, and of course the unique capability that they're getting to see also is the shipborne helicopters that they're getting with their ships. So all these are an area that we have to factor in our operations, we have to factor in our overall strategy, and look forward to how we're going to counter these new assets in the future.